toss to White. He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl!
Welcome to Patriots Touchback Podcast.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Patriots Touchback Podcast, Season 3, Episode 61. We have now done with free agency. Well, for us, we have anyway. Now it's time for the NFL draft. We are literally 5 weeks and 1 day out of the main event itself, and it's time for us to go through every position, every class to see who could New England take, what are our top fives on who we want, or who are our top fives we've got on our main boards itself for just the overall class. I've got Kieran and I've got Rob on board with me tonight on this fantastic Wednesday night. Please make sure you smash the like button, spike the subscribe button, tell all your friends, follow us on social media platforms. Make sure you follow the podcast on Spotify and on Apple as well. Again, we are still a little bit shy of 100 subs, guys. So I think about 12 or 13 off. So please make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can get to that magic number before the NFL draft in 5 weeks' time. Speaking of the NFL draft, we've got Kieran is very knowledgeable of his with his college stuff, as well as Rob. So I'm in good hands for, I would say, the next 3 weeks or so. We will have Nick back and DJ as the season goes on. Gentlemen, how are we doing this evening?
All good. Probably a bit better than you with your boo-boo on your arm, but if this was the regular season, Carl would be on injured reserve right now.
Yeah, I would be on injured reserve right now. I probably wouldn't. I might make it back. I may make it back for the postseason, but even that's cutting it very, very fine. But damaged it at work. I'm out of work now for the next 6 to 8 weeks. So really, really not good. Really not good. But at least I've got good people to talk to. Rob, how are we doing, mate?
Yeah, doing good, thank you. No major injuries over here, so can't complain too much. But you're fighting through injury. You're playing through injury for us, Carl. That's a real team play. That's the leadership that we are.
I mean, I've got my eyes.
Exactly.
I mean, I've got my eyes. I mean, that's really all you need, really, for this. Missing the microphone is all I need for the really. But no, we're remaining in good spirits. But anyway, enough of my wonky elbow. Let's crack on with it. So, first class we're going to start off with for the draft is one of the deepest and probably one of our most dire needs going. Considering all we really did was get Draymond Jones in at edge, it looks like edge could be our first call of the NFL draft, where we still need a backup tackle, we still need receivers, we still need tight ends, but we'll get more to them in the coming weeks. But we're going to start off with the defensive end / edge rushers. Now, obviously, your likes of Ruben Bain Jr., David Bailey, Keldrick Folk, Peter Woods, probably potentially TJ Parker, Cassius Howell, are all probably going to be gone by the time New England are on the clock at 31. But we're just going to go through our top 5 positioning, what we've got on. None of these players we're going to take, but it's always nice to give the consumer advice to the neutral that is interested in what we've got. So, Kez, what have you got to start off for your top 5?
Well, before I get to my top 5, I just want to kind of come back on what you just said then in the rundown of who's going to be off the board by 31. Now, I've only got 2 names that I am absolutely dead certain will be off the board by the time we pick a 31, and that's David Bailey and Ruben Bain. I think there will be other edge defenders taken before we pick, but in terms of what order they're going to go in, I genuinely don't know, because I think it's very much a case of taste. So, yeah, I would only say there's only 2 concrete at the moment. I would say we are definitely going to go by the time we pick. So my top 5 as of now, I have Bailey at 1, I have Bain at 2, I have Mesidor at 3, I have Folk at 4, and then R. Mason Thomas at 5.
What about you, Rob?
Interesting. I've got the same two at the top with Bailey and Bain in that order, and then it's from there that it gets a little bit different, really. I would go with probably Folk at 3, and then TJ Parker and Zion Young as well, rounding out my top 5.
Ooh, Zion Young looks a little bit too high for me. I don't know. There's something about. So my top 5 would consist of obviously Ruben Bain, David Bailey, if you would. Keldrick Folk, I think, is going to be gone by. I would probably say he'll be gone by at least pick 24 at that point. Then I've got Peter Woods, the edge rusher out of Clemson.
He's an interior player, so I don't think.
You think he's an interior player?
Yeah,
I'd agree.
I would say he's more of an interior lineman.
What, same with TJ Parker?
No, TJ Parker, I've broken, we'll get into this in a second, but I've broken mine down in categories, and I have him as more of like a power end than a typical pass rusher. But yeah, I've got Woods categorized as an interior defensive lineman on mine.
Okay. So let's start off. We're going to start with a name that's literally been going around. So I'm sure we've all done mock drafts, and it does seem like the consensus is looking like Mason Thomas, the edge out of Oklahoma. What would you say on Mason Thomas, Kieran?
I mean, he's undersized, but incredibly explosive. Like you notice the first step quickness, the twitch. Like he has the bend to get low underneath tackles. He's very refined in terms of like his pass rush move set. He can generate speed to power very quickly, and has that overall motor that you'd want from a defensive end. He's not going to be a run defender. He's not overly long. As I said, he's undersized. But if you're looking for a pure pass rusher that can give you some juice off the edge, then I feel like he'd be a really solid pick at number 31. I have him kind of on the second round bubble at the moment. I feel like his range can be anywhere from back end of 1 to kind of like the top 10 to 15 picks of round 2. There's a lot of guys in that range, and I think people are going to have these names in all kinds of orders. But Mason Thomas, for me, as I said, he's my number 5 edge. I like him a lot more than a lot of other guys in that range. So I would think he would be a good fit personally.
Yeah, so scouting reports that he says he's got explosive first step off the snap, convert speed to power, violent technique, remarkable bend and ankle flexion. That allows him to flatten around the arc or stay in balance through the contact. He's got natural pad level. His natural pad level keeps him low without thinking about it. He's relentless in the pursuit from the backside. He's a fourth quarter animal. So statistic here is 6 of his 9 sacks in 2024 came protecting leads, which tells you something about his competitive wiring. He carved a shallow path inside against slower tackles, and he plays with a nasty competitive streak that belies his frame. That's the word to describe it. Anyway, this does sound like another prototypical. This does sound like a prototypical Vrabel signing, or Vrabel draft pickup, if that makes sense, really, because that's what he's intending of. His weaknesses, yeah, as you said, he's undersized. He's only 249. Maybe he bulks up a little bit in the off season. Maybe, don't know. Anchor does dissolve against down blocks. Hands arrive a little bit late at the point of attack. Durability is a legitimate red flag. High ankle sprains to both ankles early in his career. So then soft tissue injuries as a senior. So there is a little bit of durability issues on that one. And taller tackles with active hands, they can widen his rush arc and widen past the pocket when he loses leverage and stands up. Rob, how keen are you on Mason Thomas with the way it's all been described right now?
Yeah, I like him, and it's not a pick that I would hate if we were to take him at 31. I noticed the same things. He's very quick off the line. You notice that speed and explosiveness straight away. Although he's undersized, and I'll come on to that a bit more in a second, he seems to play stronger than what you would expect, given his height and weight. He can move people around. He flashed off the screen for me, which for me, as somebody who is not the most adept at breaking down tape in loads and loads of detail, I'm also not watching hours and hours of film. I'm watching highlight videos on YouTube. So I'm looking for stuff that catches my eye, in terms of being able to analyze, the good aspects of a player's game. And he certainly did that for me. He's obviously been productive, 7 sacks and 9 sacks in each of his last 2 years at Oklahoma. But the concerns that I have around him, one is the injury history. As it's been mentioned, his ankles. He missed 3 games last year with a quad injury. But you're going to see with me, in terms of a little bit of a theme, is going to be around size and height with pass rushers. And he's 6'2". So I sort of compiled a bit of a list of some of the top pass rushers in the NFL, because that's what you're hoping to find, right? And when you look at, I'll go through this list: Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, Max Crosby, Josh Hines-Allen, Trey Hendrickson, Nick Bosa, Brian Burns, Alex Highsmith, and Aiden Hutchinson are all 6'4" and taller. The only 3 guys that I could find that I would class as elite pass rushers that aren't that height: Micah Parsons, Khalil Mack, and Nick Bonito, and they're all 6'3". So, potentially, it's possible to find somebody at a smaller height than that. But, as we mentioned at the start about Zion Young, he's a big guy. So those would be my concerns around Mason Thomas.
Mason Thomas reminded me a little bit of Brandon Graham. That's kind of like where I was looking with, because he's kind of that smaller, compact edge rusher, but just has that low center of gravity, that explosiveness that gets underneath and creates pressure from being low. And if you can get, Brandon Graham's a Hall of Fame candidate, right? But if you can get kind of that level of disruption consistently from him, not in an every down role, I still think it's a pick worth taking. I've categorized on my list. I've got a list of pure pass rushers, and then the other one is power ends and run defenders. And I think if you look at what we've already got, you've already got, like, obviously Draymond Jones is a bigger edge rusher, obviously former defensive tackle. So you've kind of got your big end. We just let Anthony Jennings go because he didn't really necessarily fit the scheme. So you've got them. You've got Landry on the other side as well. But we don't have a guy with juice, really. Like that's for me. That's the big factor with this edge rush class for us in particular as a team, is that you've got guys like Keldrick Folk, like Zion Young, and TJ Parker, and then guys later on. I've got a few more down this list. They could all do a job in the right scheme and could be successful picks elsewhere, but I just don't think they fit what we are looking for. Like you mentioned Zion Young, Rob. I don't think he's a first round pick at all. I think he doesn't offer you enough as a pass rusher, and that's what we need. So I think it would be a completely wrong pick to take someone like that, where you're not going to get any pass rush upside out of them, and they're just going to play as a power end or a traditional 4-3 defensive end, and they're going to be run defenders and setting the edge. So that's why I'm more in the kind of Mason Thomas camp, and I've got a few other names as well that I feel like will just be better fits for us. Not to say that they're not, the players I don't think are good fits aren't good players, because they are. I just don't think they're fits for us in particular.
Okay, let's move to this guy I actually really do like, but is he going to be around by the time we're on the clock of 31? And that is TJ Parker out of Clemson. 6'4", 263. His measurables are pretty good. He had a broad jump of 120, which is pretty high on the combine scale. His 10-yard split, which is obviously the one metric on this poll we do keep an eye on, was 1.61, which is really, really good. He's got good height, good his weight 263. His 40 time was 4.68. That is rapid for a guy of his size. Vertical 34. The only thing is a little bit worrying is his hand size, but I'm not really too bothered about that. I look at him as, a very he can work both outside and inside. He is a dominant pass rusher. Weaponizes his hands at the point of attack. Ball stripping ability is elite, but it's not coincidental. He had 6 forced fumbles in 2024, came from precise timing and calculated violence at the catch point. A long arm rush can absolutely devastate tackles. Sets firm, movable edges against the run by utilizing his length and his upper body strength. And he reads the backfield while rushing, which adjusts his path to stay connected to the QB's movement. There's a lot of really good traits here, but is Parker going to be there by the time we get to 31?
I think it's quite possible. I feel like he's a bit of a polarizing prospect because I think some teams that run different schemes are going to be a lot higher on him than others. I feel like he's a bit of a tweener because he has got an element of pass rush to him. He's got great power, plays with great leverage. He's a really good run defender and a good edge setter. And he can rush the passer, but he's not overly athletic. He doesn't have that elite get off that you'd want. And he's still developing in terms of the toolbox. So again, for us, he would be a development prospect. I don't think he's a kind of straight away impact player, and I'm not sure again that he's the greatest fit at 31. I feel like he'd be a good complementary piece to a team that already has an established rusher or two. And like you said, Cole, he is versatile. He can play inside, he can drop into coverage. He's a good player. I'm just not sure again that I would be pulling the trigger at 31 on that, just purely based off of fit.
What you, Rob?
Yeah, I like the guy. And he's somebody that, if I was going to guess, I would say was probably gone by 31. But if he was there, then I would love to have him. I think in Daniel Jeremiah's third mock draft he just did, he had him going off to Dallas at number 20 overall. But there's been so much variance in terms of, as has been mentioned, the order of which these guys go, because they all have their own sort of flavour to them. I really liked watching the tape of him. When I watched his 2025 tape, so his production in 2025 wasn't quite where it was the previous year. And when I first watched him in 2025, I thought he didn't flash that much for me, particularly athletically, as it's been mentioned. There's guys on this list that, when you look at the tape, they look a little bit different in terms of their physique or whether it's speed or strength. But when I watched the tape from the previous year where he had 11 sacks rather than 5, I thought I saw a little bit more of that. Very strong physical player, has the ability to drive tackles back when he's rushing the passer, and overall a good player against the run from what I saw. So I liked a lot of what he brought to the table. I guess there's not really too much that I can see in terms of a concern. He had a knee surgery after 2023, but his production in 24 and 25 was great. So I think that feels like a pick that has a fairly high floor, but maybe not the highest ceiling for me.
Yeah, here's the deal with Parker. On the 2025 tape, which I've seen, it might actually be more instructive for NFL evaluators than what he did in 24. He faced more tension, more chips, more scheme adjustments, and he designed to neutralize him. And he didn't always have answers for it. That's not really a red flag in my book. That's more sort of a developmental thing that he needs to get hold of. His rush menu needs to grow for me. He would prefer to fit a 4-3 scheme because that would then let him pin his ears back, especially on third down to go after the quarterback, and it also to trust him to hold up against the run on early downs. He's not a liability when asked to set the edge, which is a good thing because none of
He's
our
very
edges
good at
last
setting
year.
the edge. Run defense is not a concern with Parker at all.
No, so that's easily that's it. So that's one thing that we are trying to develop a little bit more better. I'd say his floor is a quality starter who contributes immediately. His ceiling depends on whether he can diversify that pass rush approach. Given his track record of growth from Phoenix to Death Valley, betting against his development will be a mistake. So maybe if we do end up taking him in the first round, maybe you'll see a glimpse of what he could be in year one, but then by year two, you then expected to, right, okay, now it's time for you to kick on.
Possibly. Yeah, I think you make a good point about the floor. I think there is an element of a safe floor with TJ Parker. I just don't know if I see a great deal of upside to warrant pulling the trigger at 31.
Okay, let's go with Let's go with a name. Choose a name that you think we could potentially take then, if that is the case. We've gone through Mason Thomas and we've looked at TJ Parker, two that could be warranted to be taken. The one name I'm going to throw out there, and even though, and Nick has mentioned this guy plenty of times as well, Akeem Mesidor, the edge out of Miami. Now, he's 25 years of age, so it is a bit not on the older side, but, you're coming out of college, you're out your senior year, this, that, and the other. So basically, by the time you finish your rookie deal, especially on a fifth-year option, you'll be turning 30. Which means you either save money if it doesn't pan out, or he could end up being really good. Mesidor, 259, 6'3". What do you make of Mesidor? Because whilst watching him, I didn't really watch Miami at all in the season, but I did watch the postseason, and he stood out at the end. Him and Ruben Bain was incredible, but Mesidor does not get the praise that he deserves.
So, whenever I write down my evaluations, I always kind of write pros and cons for both. I have two cons for Mesidor, and that is age and injury history. Everything else is a positive. I said to Nick when we were speaking privately, I said if he was 3 years younger, he would be a lot closer to Bailey and Bain in terms of being in the conversation for going in the top 10. I think Mesidor is an excellent player. He's explosive. You can see that first step quickness. He's very refined as a pass rusher. Like, he has a deep toolbox of moves. He's versatile. You can play him, all along the formation. He has a wide 9 as a typical hand in the ground defensive end. You can kick him inside as a 3 tech. He's got strong hands. He can shed blocks. But it's just the fact that he's going to be 25 as a rookie, coming off a relatively I wouldn't say substantial injury history, but enough to sort of get you a little bit concerned. He's not overly long, but still has decent size. I think he's fantastic, and I think it's one of those tough decisions that you would have to make. That if he's on the board at 31, the talent and what he could do for you right now in a Super Bowl window versus the age and how long you might have him for. Because Nick was making a point of, okay, you pick him at 31, you've got him for 5 years, including a 5th-year option. You could tag him for 2 years, so you get him till 32 before you have to renegotiate a contract, which is not a lot of time. Like, ideally you want a lot younger guy. But if he can help you right now when you're in a Super Bowl window and give you that explosiveness and juice and pass rush threat off the edge, at 31, I think I would probably still be very interested, even at 25 years old. So I think Mesidor is excellent. And I think he is being overlooked purely based on the age.
Yeah, he can play most positions. I've just seen on here. He's like a chess piece. You can put him anywhere and he will do a job for you. Rob, what do you make of Akeem Mesidor? Obviously, his age does have a factor in this, and also he's had foot surgery twice. I'm not sure if it's on the same foot or it's on both feet. I've got no idea. Does that concern you at all if he's there to pick a 31 maybe?
Yeah, so I think this is another great example of how polarizing like this class of defensive ends is. Obviously, Kieran, you sound like very high on Messidor, and I can completely understand that. When you watch the film, like there's not really a whole lot of weakness in his game. Like he looks great on film. I think he's the most NFL ready of the options that are likely to be there at 31. So I'll kind of run through why I don't have him as high as what you do. It is surgeries on both feet, so there is a little bit of a concern there injury wise, and it's not so much the age for me, right? You know that he's 25 years old in the sense that there is value in drafting somebody there, and you know, yes, 4 or 5 years on a rookie deal, absolutely fine. That's worth it. You know, if it's great production, even if you don't keep him around after that. My concern with Messidor is that, you know, he's 25 years old playing around players that are 21 and 22 years old. And is the reason that he looks great on film because he is a fully formed, he's in his adult body at 25 years old, whereas some of these other kids are still growing and are still developing. And so if that's the case, then does what he's been able to produce at the college level translate into the NFL once he's going up against real, you know, other men that are 25, 30 years old? He looks great on film, but I guess, do you have any concern that he's a fully grown fish in a pond of baby tadpoles, I suppose?
I think it's a fair enough point to raise. Definitely, like, you know, especially as he'll be, as you said, like, you know, it is very much a case of, you know, if he's playing against true freshmen who are 18, like, you know, there's a big variance there. I guess you can also flip that in the sense that he, like you said, most NFL ready, you know, NFL body, someone that is more likely to hold up against NFL players physically and with the experience than perhaps a 21-year-old who's incredibly raw. Like, I look at another player in a similar range, like Cassius Howell from Texas A&M, who like is relatively similar as a player, but like doesn't have great body mass or core body strength and has insanely short arms, like to the point where it's like almost like bottom 15 percentile. Like it's concerning. Like if Cassius Howell had more bulk and longer arms, there is no question he's going higher in this draft. But that is going to limit him significantly. And I think teams are going to be really put off by that. And I think that it's the same with Messidor. Like you said, age, injury history. Like, is it just a case of man versus boys when it comes to Messidor? And I think that's ultimately the kind of the ballpark we're in at number 31. You know, we haven't got the luxury of picking what I would call a pretty sure thing in David Bailey or Ruben Bain. So no matter who we take out of this cluster of edge rushers, whether it is someone at 31, whether it's someone at 63 or at 95, like there's going to be something wrong with them. There's going to be some deficiency. You know, I think it's a case of banking on. Do you bank on the upside as for the younger player that you can develop that you think can be better longer term? Or if you're trying to win a Super Bowl within the next 5 years, does Messidor give you the best chance of doing that?
It's a good one to say. I don't mind Messidor, but all depends where we go from there. It all depends if his injury history is put off. As I said, I've got on my board here. I think he's projected to be an early second rounder. If a team really needs an edge, he could end up going to the back end of the first, which it wouldn't at all surprise me. But since you mentioned Cassius Howell, let's move into Cassius Howell, shall we? And yeah, his measurables are not great. Height 6'2", weight 253. His arm length is 30 and a quarter. That is small.
I mean, they were talking about Will Campbell.
Forget the hands. No. That was his hand. Yeah. Was that his hand? No, it was arm length.
That's his arm length, yeah.
It's his arm length, yeah. But that's
his arm length is like almost like to the point where we've not seen an edge rusher with that short arms in a long time. Like, it is almost bottom percentile. It's crazy how much of a lack of length he has, and it's not. And obviously, it's not just that as well, but like he's a small frame, undersized guy as well. Like, so that it's those physical measurables that are going to put him all over the map, because I feel like some teams are going to be really off him, and then other teams will be banking that he can still offer something.
Yeah, I went on a real journey with Cassius Howell, and I think it was quite appropriate because the second that I turned on the film for him and I saw the first clip, I was like, wow, this guy is quick, and he jumps off the screen in terms of his speed, his get off, and his ability to get to the quarterback quickly. And so initially I was like, oh my God, wow, what a player. And then as I kind of went on and I did a little bit more looking at him, some more film, and then into the measurables and stuff, I think this guy has bust written all over him. I'll be honest. He's undersized. I'm going to go back to my 6'4" and above sort of thing there in terms of, we mentioned arm length, but he's 6'2", 253 pounds. So he is a little bit on the smaller side. And I just worry that he's a bit of a one-trick pony. And that one trick is elite. Like, he has elite speed off the edge. So perhaps that's enough, and maybe that's something that, it works at the college level. Maybe that'll translate to the NFL, but it just feels like something that once pro coaches and pro tackles get an opportunity to kind of work it out and put some kind of, defensive mechanism in place, does he have a second gear that he can go to? And I'm not sure that he does. So it's similar in terms of his play style to how I sort of viewed it. But at the very start, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then over time, there was nothing else really there, in terms of substance. I think he's going to struggle against the run. And yeah, I don't know. I think he's a great idea, I suppose, but I just, I think he's potentially a bust.
What you are betting on, though, with Howell is a player whose motor and pass rushes can outrun his physical limitations on, enough snaps to justify significant investment. So the realistic outcome is a designated pass rusher on a 4-man front, who will terrorize quarterbacks on third down and in obvious passing situations. The run defense concerns, they were already real before the combine. And obviously the lack of length and the height makes the anchor issues, edge setting struggles, and the contact discipline problems harder to fix. So some front officers will watch the 25 SEC tape and see a future double-digit sack artist. Others will fixate on those arms and wonder how long the production holds up against NFL caliber scheming. Don't get me wrong, the talent is obvious, but the questions are just louder now than what they were previously.
And I think with him, I don't know if you saw this, Rob, but there were quite a few plays on tape that I saw where he doesn't quite finish the play, where he generates that pressure. He gets off quick, he gets in the backfield, but then he misses the sack, or he doesn't quite wrap up the running back. And you think, this is that a length problem because he can't quite get his arms around the line? There's a lot of blown tackles in the backfield I noticed in particular. So that in itself is a concern. I wonder, I mean, what did you say his weight was, Carla, in the 250s?
253.
Yeah, if he drops like 20 pounds, like he could be an off-ball linebacker because he can drop into coverage. And I just wonder whether some teams might look at that and think, well, he's athletic, he's quick, he can drop into coverage. Is he someone that we think, well, he can't play on the edge at the pro level? Do we have to get him to drop weight and try and remodel him as an off-ball linebacker? I genuinely think that might be in consideration.
I think it could be as well. Let's throw out another name out there. Let's go with, I'll tell you what, let's go with one of Rob's favorite picks. I'll let him take the floor this one. Zion Young out of Missouri. This is one you got in your top 5. So do you want to defend yourself now?
Sure. Why not? I'll give you my reasons for why I like Zion Young, and you can tear me to pieces for it. I understand that this guy is a little bit raw, shall we say. He's only really got one great year of production, which is his most recent one at Missouri, where he registered 42 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 16.5 tackles for loss, and 2 forced fumbles. However, this guy is 6'6". He's 262 pounds and he's 21 years old. So I see this as a guy who is just scraping the surface in terms of what he can potentially be. He is already a pretty good run defender. He can set the edge for you. He can do a job on first and second down. Has he got the crazy bag of pass rush moves? No, he doesn't. But what he does have is elite power. He's not the quickest guy, but he seems to me that this is a powerful guy. And at 6'6" with long arms, he can get his hands on offensive tackles and he can push them back and he can drive them back towards the quarterback. And I think that with good coaching, he's somebody that can develop over time and develop some of those pass rush moves. One of the things that stood out to me on tape is that when the quarterback escapes the pocket and Zion Young gets off a block, all of a sudden the quarterback's maybe 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage looking downfield, and they turn around, they see a 6'6" mammoth sprinting towards them, and it's a big obstacle for quarterbacks to look past, to throw past, and it's just a pretty scary sight. I think that he could be with, development. Is he going to be polished on day one? No. But I think that this guy has a lot of upside. I really do. I did a little bit of looking in terms of some of the intangibles, and I really like this kid. So, we talk about Drake May being the youngest of 4 siblings, and Drake's talked about like the leadership that's given him from a young age. Zion Young is the youngest of 10 siblings, right? And he talks about needing he's loud because he needed to be heard. And so this guy's got a great personality. He seems like a natural leader. And his dad was in the military, which he talks about discipline and leadership again, being something that he's experienced from a young age. Seems like a great teammate. He's met with the Patriots at the Combine. And so I think that this guy has some of the highest upside in the draft of the guys that are going to be available. I think that this guy has massive upside. So I would love to see him be a Patriot at 31. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I'm not saying that you're not anything wrong. I would probably say he's had the one thing that does worry me, especially worries me with players, is off the field incidences. He's had 2 of them. That clouds the picture. A misdemeanor assault charge from the Michigan State tunnel fight as a freshman and a DWI arrest in December 2025. That is still pending a court hearing.
Yeah, he got kicked off one of his previous teams. So Missouri is his 3rd college team, and he's been kicked off one previous program. So there is obvious off-field concerns with him. Obviously, understand players can make mistakes, particularly at a young age. So you don't want to hold that too much against him. I think there are some positives. I'm not going to completely bury the guy and say he's a waste of space, but he does have great size and great length. He is, a high motor guy, excellent run defender, rock solid anchor against the run. He can handle himself against double teams. He can play along the front. He can kick inside. But I think for me, again, going back to what we're saying, what we require as a team, he doesn't have that explosiveness or first step quickness. He's not very good as a pass rusher in terms of his move set. He's not a good bender. He doesn't get low and play with good leverage. He doesn't corner very well. I think he is a kind of old-fashioned 4-3 edge-setting defensive end, hand in the ground. And I don't think we need that. So, I think in the right system, he'd be good. And I think you could be right, Rob. I think you put him in the right place and he could be a real upside pick. I just don't think he is what we need. And I have him as a 2nd rounder. And I know when you're at 31, there's a lot of players in the back end of the 1st round that have got mixed grades, right? That's the whole point of the 1st round at the end. But I just do not see him being worth a 1st round pick at all. But ultimately, the draft is very subjective. So there are going to be a lot of teams that probably like him, others that don't. They're going to be analysts and fans that like him and others that don't. I guess we'll see once he hits the field for his new team. But I'm just a little bit withdrawn on this one.
Yeah, if the ceiling question comes down to explosiveness, if an NFL strength program can unlock a quicker first step, you're looking at a legitimate every down starter who can pile up pressure numbers on and anchor one side of the defensive line for years. Even if the athleticism stays right where it is, the floor is a valuable rotational piece who makes his money defending the run, generating consistent pressure through effort and technique, and being the kind of player, coaches can count on every single snap. As I said, the off-field history will cost him in some boardrooms, and rightfully so, but the football player on tape, as you've already seen, Rob, is someone who belongs in the conversation as a legitimate day. I think Kieran's right. He's a day 2 selection. I think he's a day 2 selection, so...
He's quite similar stylistically to Keldrick Folk, right? Who's probably got a better chance of going in the first round. They're both guys with the ideal size, the ideal length, excellent run defenders. They've got good power. They have the versatility. They don't really have the explosiveness or the first step, and don't have great bend. Like, they're very, very similar. I just think that Folk is just that tick better. And again, I wouldn't necessarily think Folk is a great fit for us either. It's a bit strange because I feel like both of these guys would have fit in Belichick's defense quite well, but not now with what we're running with Zach Kerr and Mike Vrabel. I don't see the fit there. But yeah, I'm interested to see where Zion Young goes, because I feel like the evaluation is going to be all over the map with him, similar with Cassius Howe.
Yeah. Right. Pick a player, Kieran.
Well, I'm going to give you a player who I think is pretty much locked into the second round. I'd be very surprised if he went higher or lower. And I'm going to give you Malachi Lawrence from UCF. Someone who I think would be a good fit for us in terms of what we're looking for. Incredibly explosive, incredibly twitchy, can bend and corner off the edge, high motor player, relentless, advanced as a pass rusher, quick and violent hands. Not going to be a guy that's going to defend the run particularly well, or anchor against those double teams. He's quite lean in his lower half. He's got kind of solid upper body mass, but kind of like a lean lower half, and doesn't have great power. So he's not going to be a ball rush guy. But if you're looking for a designated pass rush specialist, I guess similar to like Josh Uche, but I would say probably an uptick better than Josh Uche. I feel like Malachi Lawrence would be a solid pick. Now, I wouldn't have him in consideration at 31. And if we trade back from 31 into the top sort of 10 picks of round 2, again, I think that's a little bit rich. But I could see there being a slight chance that he could be available to us at 63. I think he's going to kind of go in that 50 range, but
would you? Yeah. Here's the question. Let's just say let's say the clock was on at 50. Let's say clock 57. Malachi Lawrence still not taken, and we're at 63. Would you trade up?
Potentially. If you're looking at just moving up 6 picks, then yes, absolutely. If he's your guy,
what would you do? What did you do? Give up a 4th for next year's 5th or something?
Maybe, yeah.
Some of those lines.
Maybe. We've got 2 4ths, we've got a 5th, we've got 4 6-round picks. So there's flexibility.
So his weaknesses, I've just seen run defense is a real concern. He gets washed out of his gap against power schemes. He struggles to anchor when offensive linemen get into his chest on double teams. His missed tackle rate is way too high. That would insanely piss off Mike Vrabel.
He's kind of like an over pursuer, an over aggressor in terms of like
he'll have to reel that
his
in.
Hair on fire, and he just needs to calm down a bit because he can get a little bit overzealous and just miss tackles from being too aggressive. Like, he needs to rein that in. And yes, you're right. It is a bit of a concern.
Yeah. Light frame raises questions about adding functional mass without losing his speed and advantage. And his assignment discipline lapses show up on tape, particularly against misdirection and play action. So there's a lot of work to be done on this player then if he is sat there at 63.
Yeah, but again at 63, the back end of the second round, you're going to get a developmental guy that's got flaws. So, I have him here as situational speed rusher, second round pick. Someone who can rotate in, like, isn't going to play every down. You probably obviously bring him in on obvious passing downs. and you hope that he can develop into a bit more of a role player. But if we're taking another position at 31, and you think, right, well, we definitely need to address the edge in the second or the third round, this is a guy that I would like in that back end of the second round range if he's available to us. I still think there's a chance he goes a bit higher than that, but yeah, like he's not the finished article, and he's definitely not for me a first round like bubble player. But if like we said, we're not sure what we're doing at 31. Are we taking receiver? Are we trading back? Are we going O-line? Or are we going to go for one of the edge rushers we've already spoke about? But I think if you're looking to address edge at the end of the second round, then I think Lawrence is a good fit for that.
Yeah. His year one seeding as a nickel and dime package rusher, he can line up as a wide 9 or reduce inside on 3rd and long. So that creates favorable one-on-ones against guards. If he adds about 10 pounds of functional weight without sacrificing his bend, there is a realistic path to 25 plus snaps per game by year 2. And it'll be an eventual role as a strong side end on a 4-down front. The athletic baseline is there for a 6 to 8 sack ceiling once the body catches up to the toolkit. So, as I said, this is a developmental player that we've got to keep an eye on here. Rob, pick a player.
Yeah.
Which player are you not necessarily going to go in rounds 1 or 2, but who could be a sneaky day 2 to early day 3 pick? Because I've got a couple of names on my board here, but I want you to take this one. So
sure, yeah. So I've got somebody that I think is going to be day 2. Kieran might already be able to guess by what I've said on frame and size, but it's going to be Danny Dennis Sutton out of Penn State. Who I don't think is going to be close to the first round, but in the second round, I really like him as an option. Out of Penn State, 6'6", 256 pounds. So he's got that size and weight again that I like to see in that outside pass rusher. 22 years old. In terms of his production over the last couple of years at Penn State, 42 tackles in each of the last 2 seasons. 8.5 sacks in each of the last 2 seasons, 12 tackles for loss in 2025, 13 in 2024, 3 forced fumbles in 25 and 2 in 24, and he even had an interception in 2024 as well. This guy is versatile as anything. He plays on the outside. He gets dropped back into coverage as a spy. He's even rushed from the inside on obvious passing downs. I think that he's solid against the run. I like that. He's a very strong tackler. So I noticed that when he makes tackles on running backs, a lot of the time he's pushing them back at the point of contact. So rather than having the running back fall forward for extra yardage, he manages to stand them up and push them back at the point of contact. And he's a violent hitter. When he hits the quarterback, he makes plays on the ball. And he hits the ball carrier violently. He's got pedigree. 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He made 3rd team All Big Ten in 2023 and in 2025. Again, I think he's somebody that has that upside. But I think he could be, a contributing player in certain situations from the start. To be fair, it's interesting you mentioned Malachi Lawrence. I loved him as well. He was at the top of my list of that second group, along with DDS.
Yeah.
He smashed the combine. He was top 3 in everything. And to be fair, Danny Dennis Sutton wasn't far behind. He was 6th in the 40-yard dash for a 4.6340. And then he had a 39.5-inch vertical, did Danny Dennis Sutton, and a 10'11" broad jump, almost 11 feet, which ranked 1st. So physical freak. And yeah, just all round good player. And to be fair, the guys on my list are all guys that the Patriots have met with. The Patriots met with Danny Dennis Sutton at the Senior Bowl as well. So potentially someone that we've had our eye on. But I like him. Really like him.
Yeah, so my overall scouting of it, I've done about 4 mock drafts, not on PFF, on another simulator. And in 3 of them, Danny Dennis Sutton has always been my 2nd round pick. I don't know why, but he just falls to us at 63. So that's the possibility we could go there. Heavy hands create immediate disruption. His long arms let him control blockers and keep them from reaching his chest plate, which is a huge positive on that one. He sets a firm edge against the run and hold ground versus double teams without giving up the ground very easily. His ball rush has real force when he drops his pads and drives through contact. The combined work, as you said, was historic for his size, posted top tier explosions and agility marks among all defensive ends tested. Lower body power shows up in testing and on tape when he gets downhill. Agility numbers suggest untapped pass rush potential. Competitive effort shows up late in games in postseason moments. He had 4 sacks across the 2 playoff games and versatile enough to handle multiple alignments. Versatile player. That's something Vrabel loves. His weakness, he does have some weaknesses though. His first step into contact lacks the suddenness to threaten tackles before they can get set. He has got tight hips limit his ability to bend and flatten around the arc on the speed rushers. Pad levels stay elevated too often. That gives blockers time to set. Missed tackle numbers are a little bit concerning, particularly against shifty runners in space, but compared to Zion Young, it's nowhere near close to that. Penalty totals need cleaning up, with roughing calls popping up way too frequently. That's just that's a discipline issue. I think Vrabel and Zach Kerr will kick that out of him, or rather knock it out of him. For me, the floor here is dependable, rational end who contributes on early downs. He gives you that honest every effort snap. The ceiling of the combine athleticism starts showing up more inconsistently in games. Is a defensive end who can rush the pass in volume and justify a much bigger role. How quickly he develops that counters and learns to use the test explosiveness on every snap will separate those 2 outcomes. That's just my personal opinion. Kieran, Dennis Sutton, how many times have you had him on your mock draft board?
Not many.
Oh,
maybe once
on my bonfire.
Yeah. I feel like if you're looking to draft an Anthony Jennings replacement, I feel like this is it. I think he's more talented than Anthony Jennings is. Definitely, there's definitely some stuff to like. I don't know. I feel like Vrabel might like him. Like the fact that he's also got kind of a core special teamer, and like he's a guy that can set the edge, and like he's powerful. He's got good size, good length. He's excellent against tight ends as well. He just like whenever they try and chip him, he just destroys them. And I think he can be a role player again as like a power end. Again, it's just kind of that juice and explosiveness, and that kind of side of the pass rusher that I'm a little bit reluctant on. I think if you get him in the 3rd round, that's pretty good. I think he's probably like I've got him as kind of like a 2nd, 3rd, definitely a day 2 pick, but that 2nd, 3rd bubble. There are other players I would like over him, but I think he's kind of like your typical solid mid sort of 2nd, 3rd round bubble pass rusher. Again, I'm not sure overly about it in terms of the fit. That's all. I just want some guy that can just fly up the field. That's what Vrabel wants, right? Guys that can penetrate, guys that can fly up the field and get in the backfield. And I feel that's going to be a real emphasis. And they've already brought in Draymond Jones, who's not really that kind of guy, but he's going to be the kind of the bigger end. I just feel like we need some speed. We need some juice. And I'm not sure Dennis Sutton really brings that, but I don't dislike him.
Okay. So I'm going to go for a player, and yes, this is me being a homer since I am a Michigan fan. I am a Michigan Wolverines fan. If there's only one thing that came out of the season that the Wolverines had, our defense was fantastic. Our offense was absolutely putrid. But on that note, the defensive end on my radar, he could be a 3rd. He could drop to 2nd round. He could be an early 3rd rounder. It's Derek Moore, edge on Michigan. Now I know, okay, his hand size is a bit on the small side, 9 inch and 1/8 is a bit on the small side. However, he ran a 4.65 in the 40. He's got a height of 6'4", weight 255, so equally good size there for him. Last year in his senior year, he was voted team captain. He was named Michigan's Defensive Player of the Year. And Bo Schembechler, Bo Schembechler MVP, posted 10.5 sacks. 10.5 tackles for loss and 10 sacks in 12 starts. He earned first team All Big Ten from the coaches and was selected for the East-West Shrine Bowl. Over 4 years, he totaled 95 tackles, 23 tackles for loss, 21 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles in 53 games. I loved his ball rush is his best weapon. He keeps his legs churning through the contact. Good pad level and forward lean at the top of his rush. He's a reliable tackler who wraps up and finishes well. Michigan used him in a lot of standing alignments, 3-point stances, and wide 9 looks without any drop-off. He carries 255 pounds on a frame that plays lighter with enough length to hold the point of attack. Hands and feet work together well during his rush that creates fluid speed to power conversion in his best reps. And his senior year, production spiked to 10 sacks, suggests a player who learned how to finish at the quarterback. Kez, what do you make of Derek Moore?
Well, I think I'm definitely running a different defensive scheme to you guys because every name that you guys bring up is on my power end run defenders list. Yeah, Derek Moore, I agree with you, Carl. I think a third round guy. I think that's kind of the right position for him. Powerful, excellent with the ball rush, solid run defender, dense body build and a strong anchor. He's not overly athletic. He's still developing with his pass rush moveset. He's not overly explosive or twitchy. He's not a natural bender or corner. Again, he's of the same ilk of a Young, a Falk, a Dennis Sutton, the guy with the silent J, Gabe Akers from Illinois. They're all of they're all of the same ilk in terms of they're more like edge setting big run defenders than they are natural pass rushers. I think Parker's probably, as I said before earlier in the show, Parker's probably the guy out of that lot that's kind of a bit of a tweener. Again, like a solid third round pick. I've got no issues if you're spending a third round pick on Derek Moore because I think he's kind of like exactly what you're expecting to get at that stage. He'd be very much like does what it says on the tin kind of player. Again, just doesn't offer enough as a pass rusher for me to fill that edge void that I think we need.
So his weaknesses are run defense effort is inconsistent at times. Counter moves remain undeveloped, so leaving him predictable when his initial rush gets stalled. First step quickness is not in the top tier, so that forces him to win with power over pure speed. Struggles to disengage when tackles get into his frame. That often riding blocks actually instead of working through. And pad level rises on contact at times, which surrendering the leverage his frame should provide. The floor is a useful pass rush specialist who earns snaps on third down and contributes to part of a rotation. The ceiling of the run defense effort and counter game develops. He is a star who pressures quarterbacks consistently. The jump from 4 sacks as a junior to 10 as a senior shows a player still figuring things out, and there is reason to believe more growth is coming. Rob, Derek Moore, would you take a flyer on him if he's there at pick 90? What is our pick? Is it 91?
95, I think, or is it?
95, anyway. Yeah, that's it.
Anyway, I don't mind him. Again, similar. I think he's an all-round solid player. You can't argue with the production. 10 sacks and 10.5 tackles for a loss in his final year at Michigan. It's pretty good. But I've got written down on my sheet here, is he elite at anything? I think he's good at a lot of different things. Is he elite? And I've got him in a similar bracket to two other names that I'll throw out there. But, I've got these two guys just above Derek Moore, and that's Joshua Josephs and Romello Height, who are probably a little bit more to Kieran's taste in terms of those speed guys, guys who both the first word that I wrote down next to their names was fast. And that's what sprung off the the film for those two guys, Joshua Josephs and Romello Height. I think they've both got a little bit more in terms of a package of pass rush moves, able to bend the edge. And once we get down to the third round, then I'll be a little bit less strict in terms of my 6'4" rule, and give a pass to those guys at 6'3". So I wouldn't mind Derek Moore, but if there's Joshua Josephs or Romello Height available, then I would go in that direction, because I think they offer a little bit more in terms of upside.
It makes me sound as if I just don't like big defensive ends that stub the run. And I've got nothing against them. If that's what we needed, we'd be absolutely blessed with options here. If we just think we just need a bulky edge defender to help, set the edge and defend the run, we'd be laughing, because there's a good array of players here. But in terms of what we actually require, with Chason no longer with us, I just think we're more of the same ilk. And I'm glad you mentioned those two names, Rob. I have there are two other guys I was going to mention. And I know Nick is really high on Joshua Josephs as well from Tennessee. I think he would definitely fit the bill. More likely, I think, to be there at 63 than Malachi Lawrence. I would say that. Someone that's explosive. He's got that quickness. He's refined as a pass rusher. He's rangy as a tackler in space. He's excellent at chasing down ball carriers. The thing with him, even though he's not overly big and bulky and doesn't really have a great anchor, he's quite good at setting the edge in the run game. He just doesn't necessarily have the size to kind of be a consistent run defender. He can drop into coverage. Again, like Cassius Howe, gets a lot of pressure but doesn't necessarily finish the play. So, again, I think he's a designated pass rush specialist, third downs, obvious passing situations. You bring him in to give you some juice off the edge. I would really like him at the back end of the second round if we can't get Malachi Lawrence and if we haven't taken anyone at 31. And then Romello Height, again, he's like Mesidor, where he's a bit older, but he has those physical traits as well, with the explosiveness and the first step and the twitch. Again, very refined and polished as a pass rusher. Plays with his hair on fire. He can drop into coverage. He's a typical kind of 3-4 stand-up pass rusher. But he's, again, undersized, lean frame. Lack of body mass. Isn't going to defend the run, and like was mentioned earlier, has a few missed tackles as well, probably more so than you see from Malachi Lawrence. But then with Romello Height, you're looking at a third round pick, probably. Malachi Lawrence, we're talking about a mid-second round pick, essentially, and this guy's going to go a whole round later. If we're in the third round and you think he's a good complementary piece, I've got no issues with pulling the trigger there on Romello Height. I think that's kind of the group I had written down for pass rushers, pure pass rushers, was Mesidor, Howe, Mason Thomas, Lawrence, Josephs, and Height. I'm not so keen on Cassius Howe because of the obvious things we spoke about earlier, but I think any of those other guys could provide us with what we need right now. And then, as we said about the kind of the powerful run defending style ones, the other two we haven't really spoke about are Gabe Akers from Illinois and then Anthony Lucas from USC, who I think again are just big power ends. And then you're going into day three. I've got other names on day three, but at that point you're just looking for depth, right? We're talking about edge being a top three need for us going into this. That means you have to address that in the top 3 rounds. So by us adding someone, I don't know, just throw a name out there here, like Mikhail Kamara from Indiana, who I think is about a 4th round pick, maybe a 5th round pick. He's just going to end up playing a similar role to someone like Braden Swinson or Elijah Ponder, So that doesn't really fix your problem. So it's kind of like you take if he's there, you take a Mesidor or R. Mason Thomas at the back end of 1. If you're not taking an edge rusher at that stage, I think you're looking at a Malachi Lawrence or a Joshua Josephs at the end of 2. And then if you're in the 3rd round, you're looking at Romello Height potentially. Or if you want a bigger guy than Dennis Sutton or Derek Moore.
What about a day? I know day 3 is all about depth for the end of the day, but is there an edge out there that, might, because you usually see in the draft, you take your first 1, 2, 3 rounds and you think they're going to turn out really good due to what they're profiled. And it doesn't really turn out that way. But when someone takes like a flyer in the 5th or 6th round with an edge or a receiver or a tight end or a defensive tackle or someone like that, and it's usually that hidden gem that they find. Who's the hidden gem that you could potentially find in the back end in day 3? Is there a name out there in day 3 which you're like, do you know what? He might actually be sneakily better than what the evaluators are saying. Either one of you two, take the floor.
I'll give you a fun one if you like. Well, I'll give you a fun name that I like, whose tape I really enjoyed watching. The best video that I could find of him was in Spanish, which was odd. And it's Michael Heldman out of Central Michigan. This is a guy that the Patriots have met with, and I'll give you a sort of bit of information. And I've kind of fallen in love with this guy as well. So he's been at Central Michigan for 5 years. He's 6'4", 260 pounds. He's 23 years old, and he has met with the Patriots at the Hula Bowl. No injury history that I could, or at least not that I could find. And so in terms of his production, 2025, he had 48 tackles, 10.5 sacks, 16.5 tackles for loss, and 2 forced fumbles. And watching this guy, he's playing at Central Michigan, right? So is there a bit of a jump in terms of standard going from that to the NFL? Yes. But this guy looks like he has the talent above the level at what he's playing at. You know, this guy is the strongest, most powerful player on the field. He's getting double teamed and he's beating those double teams. He's got a real range of pass moves, whether pass rush moves, whether it's power, speed, swim moves, spin moves, everything. I love this guy, and he just looks a little bit different to everybody else. When I was watching him, I thought, wow, this guy looks like sort of prime JJ Watt. In the same way that JJ looked, in the same way that JJ looked above the competition in the NFL, this guy looks above the competition at Central Michigan. So I'm not saying he's of the same level. I would say that he looks a little bit different. And this guy has intangibles that you would absolutely love. He won an award in 2025 at Central Michigan for leadership. They have an award that's awarded to one male athlete and one female athlete, and he won it for the male athlete. And you can go and find this article, which is on the Central Michigan website, and it's an article titled "Football Family Faith: Michael Heldman becomes a star and a man." And it is this beautiful article about his story from childhood into high school, college, and to the position that he's at now. Whether it translates to the NFL, I don't know. But this guy looks like a great story. He looks like a great locker room fit. And, you know, if we're talking about a day 3 pick, it's someone that I'd love to see join the team. Okay.
That's going very deep. That is. I respect the hustle with that one. That's digging out a real depth piece. That is. I'll give you 2. One is incredibly polarizing because I'm not convinced that he's going to stay as a full-time edge rusher. Like, I think he's very much a hybrid move about player. Carl will know this. Jay-Sean Barham from Michigan, someone who kind of moonlights between swaps between playing on the edge and as an off-ball linebacker, but like he's got like that the kind of physical traits you look for. He's twitchy, explosive, great laterally in terms of sideline to sideline. He can stop the run. He can line up in multiple areas and drop into coverage. Plays with a low center of gravity. He's still very raw as a pass rusher, and he can sometimes when he's coming downhill, he can get a bit over aggressive and fly past his assignment. And like obviously, like the body frame, right? He's kind of built more like a linebacker than he is an edge rusher. So it's kind of what do you do with him? He's kind of like that tweener. So I think wherever he ends up on, I think on day 3 most likely, like is going to be interesting how he's deployed because he's kind of, you know, a bit of a difficult evaluation. And then the other one I've got. Is a guy who is going to be 26 as a rookie. So we're talking like in the Tyler Shuck ilk here. And his name is, I want to say it's Nadame Tucker from Western Michigan. Yeah. He's very much a late bloomer. So like he did absolutely nothing up until the time he transferred to Western Michigan for this season just gone. And then just kind of exploded and like had a ridiculous season. like he's got that first step quickness. He's explosive. He's got a natural bend off the edge. He's a relentless high motor guy. He's not like ideal in terms of his size and his length. Again, he's an undersized pass rusher. He's going to be a pass rush only guy. He's not going to be someone who's going to be in the run game at all. And obviously the fact he's going to be 26 years old as a rookie is going to put him probably, I've got him like 6th, 7th round. Like, I think that's probably where he's at. But I found him a really, really interesting evaluation. The fact that he's kind of been in college for a while, done nothing up until his senior year, and then just gone ham. So could be someone, again, at the end of the draft in like the 6th or 7th round, maybe even as a high priority UDFA that might come in and you might do a few odd things here and there. He's not someone who I would necessarily take, but I thought he was just kind of a fun evaluation. The fact that he's just so old.
I agree. I loved watching him as well. And in terms of the production, you talk about a crazy season. It was 14.5 sacks and 21 tackles for loss in one season at Western Michigan. Like, insane numbers. But given the age, I'm going to make a similar argument to what I did with Messidor. I thought he reminded me of sort of a dad playing with the kids in the backyard and pushing them over because he's running through these 19 and 20-year-olds. But he certainly, it's an interesting one. Yeah, I enjoyed watching this film.
I'm just going to try and find... Sorry, I'm lifting my laptop up because I've got my other computer behind me. And I'm just trying to find his stats because it is crazy.
So I'll throw you one name out there. I think it's like going to be like around. I think it's going to be like a round 6 pick, maybe around 7. But this guy did catch my eye a little bit. Vincent Anthony Jr., the defensive end out of Duke. Very good height, 6'6". He's 258. His 40 time was 4.84. His vertical 32.5. His 10 yards split, 1.67 is a little bit on the weak side, but his broad jump was 1.23. I think in 2025, Anthony exploded onto the national scene with dominant start that includes ACC Defensive Lineman of the Week honors after a 3-sack demolition of ranked Illinois. So he did step on for a little bit. Good length advantage, 78 inches. Explosive first step off the snap. Bend on the edges. Is surprising flexibility with his frame. Active hands throughout the rush sequence. Motor runs hot from snap to whistle. Pass rush repertoire continues expanding with counter moves developing to complement his speed to power. Instinctive recognition of screen plays and misdirection allows him to disrupt timing. Football character evident through community involvement and team leadership demonstrates the intangibles teams cover in franchise players. So he is a community guy. That means That means at some point he'll go in for the Walter Payton Award. His weaknesses: he's at 250. It sits well below the ideal NFL edge standard. Run defense consistency waivers would ask to set the edge, sometimes getting washed down against zone schemes. Tackling fundamentals needs refinement. Pass rush plan can become predictable at times when initial move fails. And his injury history with missed games in 2023 raises some durability concerns about his frame holding up. But if he is going to be a round 6, round 7 player, we know he's just going to be, maybe a special team player, maybe a 3rd, 4th string edge as a rotational piece, but I don't think he's going to be able to address it. But he's just someone who just catches my eye. 6'6", 258. That's a monster of a guy.
Nice.
Big size.
That's my speed.
I found the Dame Tucker stats here. This is absolutely baffling. So prior to his last season at Western Michigan, he had across 3 years at Houston, he had just 10 total tackles with no sacks, no passes defense, no forced fumbles, nothing. That's all he had, 10 tackles in 3 seasons. He then moves to Western Michigan for the 2025 season, has 55 total tackles, 4 forced fumbles, and 14.5 sacks.
Is that because he went over to a shittier conference?
I think the stats also suggest he probably didn't really play the first 3 years. Hence, probably why he transferred. But like, he's done absolute shit all for 3 years and then just gone absolutely bonkers as a senior. Like, yeah, that this is what I mean. It's a very strange prospect.
So would you just draft him for shits and giggles then in round 5 or something?
Nah, I think you're probably looking at round 6 and beyond. And with him being 26 as a rookie, I'm not sure that I would be too keen on that. Again, it's a point like I made earlier. Like, if you're taking an edge rusher anywhere beyond day 3, whether that's obviously rounds 4 through 7, they're going to be in the same like position battle with Swinson, with Elijah Ponder, and that's not what we're looking for. Draymond Jones and Harold Landry are starters at the moment. We haven't replaced Chase on. You've got Jennings been cut, obviously. So we need to find guys that can make it to the field, and I'm confident Ponder can make a nice bit of a leap, next season, because he really flashed in very small spells last year. We drafted Swinson in the 5th round, when a lot of people had a 2nd round grade on him. We were kind of hoping for a bit more from him. But if you take a guy later on in the draft, they're just going to end up being a depth guy. And we need someone who can contribute now and can help get Harold Landry off the field more importantly. And that's not to say that Landry's not a good player. I think with Landry, like, he started last season so well, but that knee injury really, really hampered him and slowed him down. Now he's having knee surgery this off season, so you'd like to think that might be dealt with going into next year, like they can tidy up that problem. But you don't want him on the field for 90% of snaps every single week, because he's just going to break down. So you want someone that can play opposite Draymond Jones consistently, like Chason done last year, where he was on the field a lot. So that's where you need to spend a priority position, a priority pick at the position. Sorry. We haven't signed another edge rusher in free agency yet. We may do before the draft, but at the moment, it's got to be a pick within the first 3 rounds, because you're really not going to get anything out of a guy past that point. So, yeah, we've kind of gone over every name so far that could be in that range. If it was me, if Mesidor falls to 31, 100%. R. Mason Thomas definitely in consideration at 31. If not, you're looking at a guy at 63, like a Lawrence or a Josephs. Outside of that, again, like I'm just too on the fence in terms of the bigger guys that I don't think a schematic fits. But yeah.
Okay. All right. One more thing we're going to do before we get on out of here. We've talked about the edge rush class now for like an hour, all for an hour and 17 minutes of this pod, right?
Yeah.
I now want both of you, and I'll give mine as well, on the edge rusher, that if New England was to take at 31, who would you take? But first of all, I have to put this on.
I'll let Rob go first.
Oh, okay, let the newbie go first. Go on then, Rob.
If he's there, then I think that my first pick would be TJ Parker. If he's, because of like we say, I think that he's pretty solid all around. If he's not, then my next look would be to Zion Young, because of the upside. So
there we go. Rob's pick will be TJ Parker. Okay. Kieran, who is your pick going to be?
Again, I think I'm going to add a caveat like Rob did. If he's on the board, at 31, I would 100% consider taking Mesidor. I just think he is going to get taken before us. So, with that in mind, who is more likely to be available at 31? I would take R. Mason Thomas.
You're taking Mason Thomas?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Kez's pick is Mason Thomas. Interesting for me, because now I really don't know now. Because on one hand, Rob's took TJ Parker and you've took you know what? Mason Thomas was originally going to be my first choice, but after going through the evaluation of what TJ Parker is like, I'm going with him. I'm taking TJ Parker. So if he's at 31, that is. But we will have to see what happens because the draft is still 5 weeks away yet. But we've covered the edge class, so we've got a lot more to cover. This coming weekend, it'll be probably my favorite one of the lot. Wide receivers. This is going to be a fun. That will be a fun one. I'm not sure what's going to be on Friday or Saturday night yet. We'll still have the discussion over it, but we will have our wide receiver class show in the next few days. Kez, Rob, thank you so much, guys. Much appreciated.
Can I just have a bit of a moan before we get on out of it, if that's possible? Now, it's obviously like we're in the height of mock draft season, right? And it's a bit of fun. It's content. Lots of people are doing them. Lots of very well-connected analysts, lots of experts. And look, these guys that do things for NFL Network and ESPN and all those PFF, all of that lot, they know a lot more than what we do. And that is, that is a given, right? However, can you stop, please, mocking us defensive lineman at number 31 overall, interior defensive lineman? It is really getting my goat. I saw PFF, and I'm a PFF truther. I have been for many years. They're mocking us. The guy from Georgia, Kristen Miller, who's again a run defending nose tackle. Well, not a nose tackle, run defending interior defensive lineman, I would say. And then Daniel Jeremiah releases his. I know Nick said closer to the time of the draft, Jeremiah is normally spot on, but at this stage, he's kind of throwing things out there. He had us taking Caden McDonald from Ohio State, defensive tackle. Now, Caden McDonald is my number one defensive tackle, so that's a spoiler for when we get to that group. However, I don't have a single first-round grade on a defensive tackle, and the kind of the justification for those picks were, well, they've lost Tonga, and it enables a bit more rotation with Barmore and Milton Williams. But you look at, there are far more pressing needs on this team than interior D-line. Milton Williams and Christian Barmore are going to start. You've then got Corey Durden, who was great last year as an unsung hero. We drafted Joshua Farmer in the 4th round. He was injured at the end of the season, but he was still playing. You've got Leonard Taylor III, who started to come on as a waiver pickup later in the season on the practice squad, and then we had Eric Gregory on the main roster as well. So that is a lot of depth. Now, the only thing we don't necessarily have is a pure, big, early run-stuffing nose tackle to replace Kairos Tonga. Now, you can find one of them on day 3 of the draft, and I'll tell you now, it is really getting my goat that I'm seeing these first-round mocks. That would be a waste of a pick. If Elliot Wolf drafts a defensive tackle at 31, he is being hung from the lighthouse by his bollocks. Because genuinely, would be like when you've got a need at edge, at wide receiver, at linebacker, at offensive line, that's 4 positions there that are way more important than finding a nose tackle. So honestly, I was getting really irate with seeing this, even though it's a mock and it's a bit of fun and it isn't serious and it's just throwing things out there for for content. Just have a day off. We're not taking a defensive tackle at 31.
No, I find that quite bizarre, to be honest with you. But no, we're not taking. If we do take a defensive tackle at 31, oh my god,
told you, Wolf bollocks by the lighthouse.
And the crash out will assume when we go live for the pick. But hopefully it's a celebration one and not a crash out. But anyway, Rob, Kez, thank you for joining us tonight. We will be back again in a few days' time for the wide receiver class. Make sure you check us out for that one. That'll be episode 62. Please smash the like button on the way out. Grog, spike the subscribe button. Tell all your friends and follow us on social media platforms. Make sure you follow the podcast on Spotify and on Apple as well. And if anyone who missed our last show, you would know that we're promoting there's a NFL draft party happening at the Hippodrome Casino in Leicester Square in London. So go over to our guys at Ravens Across the Pond to grab your tickets there. We're going out of here. We'll see you over the weekend for the wide receiver class. That'll be a doozy. Good night. God bless. Go Patriots.